This webinar is going to be conducted by yours truly, Irma Vargas, and I am the COO of Canterbury Business Center. I've worked in the private and public sectors for over 25 years, and I hold a master's degree in public administration from Cal State Northridge. I am going to talk today about certifications and procurement, specifically for the state of California. However, we are not limited to selling to just within the state of California. Obviously, we can sell to other government entities across the United States and to the federal government as well. We will talk about that a little bit. If you have questions about that, we can talk about those questions once they're asked. And let's remember that everything that we talk about today has a caveat. In other words, there are always exceptions to the rule. Now, what are those exceptions going to be? It depends on your particular situation. So let's ask as many questions as you'd like, and then if I don't know the answers right at the moment, I can get back to you with those answers. So today, this webinar is brought to you by the Women's Small Business Centers in the state of California and funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration. I want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. Don't be shy. Please ask questions. If we don't have the answers, like I said, in the moment, we will get back to you. And remember, there are always additional resources beyond this webinar that we can provide to you. So let's get started. Certifications. What does that mean? Well, certifications that are acquired are for the purpose of having set-asides when responding to an RFP, an RFQ, or when submitting a bid to a government entity. And for those of you that are not familiar with those acronyms, a request for proposal, a request for qualifications, a request for information are what those bids are called. So when a government agency goes out and requests information or a bid from vendors, oftentimes what they're looking at when the vendor responds is whether or not that vendor has a certification of some sort or another. Now, why do they do that? They do that because they have a contracting goal, because the government has said that in order to purchase from vendors, 23% of those purchases government-wide should be from small businesses. And why is that, you might ask? Well, part of that reasoning is so that the mechanism of economy and buying and selling functions with everybody, and everybody has an opportunity, not just big conglomerations, not just big government companies or agencies buying from big corporate America, but also from small America, small businesses. And so across the board, 23% government-wide contracting goals are set. Now, there are variations of those small business government, which give entities and vendors and small companies even more access to selling to government agencies. So for example, the minority-based enterprise, at least 51% of owned has to be 51% owned and controlled by one or more minority. So that is a requirement of a minority-based enterprise certification. Another one is a women business enterprise, and at least 51% owned and controlled by one woman or more. that is a set aside that is also giving that business an advantage. Now, how much of an advantage overall? Some agencies require that it be 3% advantage. Some 5%. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Let's say that the total score on how you're going to be judged as to whether or not you can complete the task that is being asked is 100 points. Of those 100 points, let's say a woman business enterprise and a male business enterprise come in. But because you have a certification as a women business enterprise, you will get a 3% advantage over the other vendor that is not a women business enterprise. Now, some people might say that that's not fair, but typically women who are competing with men have not had an advantage. It's been very difficult for women-owned businesses to take advantage of all the contracts and all the requests for proposals that have been out there historically. And so this is a way to level the playing field. Another certification is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, which is needs to be 51% owned and controlled by one or more socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And the requirements are, you have to prove this in order to be certified. It's subject to business income and personal net worth size standards. And if you're a disadvantaged business enterprise, that's another set aside. Could you possibly have all three of these certifications? And if a proposal requires that you have one or more of these, take advantage of all of them at the same time in the same request for proposal? Absolutely. So that's an additional advantage, that if you are minority based, if you're a woman, and if you're a disadvantaged business enterprise, and the request for proposal states that you will get a set aside or an advantage of some kind, either on a point scale, a percentage of this point scale, that you will have a leg up over everybody else, then that's allowable. So the more certifications that you can qualify for, the better in the long run and over time. So small business size by government agencies. So the SBA size standard is 500 employees or less. And why? Why do you want to be a small business? Well, there are advantages and there are purposes for being a small business. One of them is to be eligible for loans, consulting, and government contract work, which is what we're talking about today. In other areas, compliance with ACA healthcare requirements and for calculating tax liability. So those are three major areas. So contract work, healthcare, and taxes. So let's say you've gone through the qualifications, you know that you're qualified, you've decided that you want to go ahead and be certified, put in the paperwork. What do you do if you have seen the requirements and you know that you are qualified? Well, there is a step-by-step process. What you want to do is take those steps in the right order. If you don't, what's going to happen is that you're going to be asked for information that you don't actually know yet. And why is that? Because you skipped a step. So the first step is determining the correct NACE codes for your business. Now, what is a NACE code? It's the North American indicator for your business within the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and which is why it's North American. What you want to do is determine what your NACE codes are, because not only will it tell you whether it's a qualified small business NACE code, it will also indicate across the United States, in Mexico, and in Canada that you qualify, that your product or service has been indexed. And so it's very important for you to be able to know what those NACE codes are and put as many of the NACE codes that fall under every single category that you can produce a product or service for into your profiles, into your accounts, into the system. Because eventually what you're going to do is you are going to register your business with the NACE codes into a government umbrella system that will start to notify you of when the government is looking to purchase your product and or service. And it seems kind of daunting. It's quite a bit of information. So don't hesitate to ask a question, and don't forget that we're going to put this on YouTube as well at Canterbury Business Center, so you can go back and replay it if you need to, just to, you know, pause it and really read the information. I know that it's daunting. I know that it's a lot of information, but it's really important that if nothing else, you follow these first few steps in order to have the information that you need for the next step. So it's a kind of a puzzle. Let's say that you have a business and you sell mops. Well, the NACE code may not be under selling mops, but it might be under cleaning supplies. So when you go to the website, to the NACE Codes website, you can do a search. You can do a search as to what your product is. And if you don't find anything that comes up for that particular product, go one step bigger, not smaller. So not more detailed, not what kind of mop, but what is a mop? It's a cleaning supply, right? So you're going to go bigger, because what's going to happen is in the NACE code structure, the codes and the titles get bigger, not smaller. So you're looking for cleaning supplies, you're looking for something else that is tied to mop. And then it will indicate all the codes that you can use for that particular product. Okay. Sometimes it's not just supplies, maybe it's the industry. So think about your product, think about your service, and what is the industry that would be categorized. That's where you want to start. And then you can start to go under those categories incrementally, right? And make sure that you write down all those NACE codes. Now you're going to need to write them down. You're going to need to make a note of them so that you can remember and write down exactly what it is that NACE code indicates. And you'll find out why in a little bit. The next step, after you've selected your NACE codes and you've identified them, and you've identified maybe 3 or 4. If there are not 3 or 4 for the service or product that you provide, don't worry about it. What you want to do is make sure that you've got them all. And the reason that you want to make sure that you've got them all, or at least close to them, is because when you put in that information into the systems that we're going to talk about further on, You want to be notified who's buying those products. What entities are buying those products? Is it a local agency? Is it a quasi agency? Is it a state agency? Is it a county agency? Is it the federal government? So the more NACE codes that are associated with your product or service that you identify with, the more information you're going to get from those other entities. So we've identified our NACE codes. You know what they are. You've written them down. Now you want to go and register for a Duns and Bradstreet number. Now, you can use your EIN number for that. It is very, very easy to do this. What you want to do is, you can do it two ways. You can go onto the website and do it. It literally takes about 24 to 48 hours for them to respond to you. You can even call them, and the number is here on the screen. You can see that. I have done many online, and within 24 hours have received my DUN number. Again, you want to make a note of it. You want to print the page that it comes on when they email you. You want to have it at the ready. Now, some people are afraid to do a DUNS number because they think it has to do with credit. And it does somewhat have to do with credit. It's the credit. It's not necessarily the credit of your business. It's the person, it's almost the company identity. What Duns and Bradstreet does is that they take information about your organization and they hold information if somebody complains about it. Now, are people over the life of your business going to complain? Possibly. Will they always go to Duns and Bradstreet to make the complaint? Maybe not. How do you assure that your Duns and Bradstreet stays clean, like a credit report you would want it to be clean? You service your customers. You do what you say you're going to do, and you don't have to worry about it. You might even get some good feedback in your Duns and Bradstreet report, right? Don't be afraid of it. It's necessary in order to take the next step. And so you have your NACE codes. Now you have your Duns and Bradstreet number. And now you want to go and register at sam.gov. Okay, that's the third step. So let's take a look at that. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Creating a SAMS.gov account. So what is this? It's the System of Award Management. And this is one of those websites, applications, entities that holds information about you, your company, what you sell, and how they can get a hold of you. How can they notify you about products that the government agencies are selling or wanting to buy that you might be selling? So once you have been assigned your DUNS number, you must annually register on sam.gov to remain eligible. They will notify you. It's not going to be a problem. You're not going to miss out. Now, if you change your contact information, you want to make sure that it's always updated in your sam.gov account. It's very straightforward. You go in there, they're going to ask you what your DUNS number is, which you have already acquired. They're going to ask you what your NACE codes are, which you've already determined. It takes about 3 business days to have your registration be active, but it could take up to 2 weeks. Why the time span? I couldn't tell you. I wish I could, but it could take up to 2 weeks. So if it doesn't take 3 days, if it does take 2 weeks, if it's a time when it's the end of the year, if there's a lot of holidays towards the end of the year, it could take up to 2 weeks. Don't be nervous about it. Just keep checking your email. They will notify you when it's active. You can also go in there and check to make sure that to see that it's active or not. Once you've registered with SAM.gov, in the state of California, what you want to do is go to ECal Procurement. And ECal Procurement is where you will actually submit the information to become certified as a small business or a women-owned business or a minority business or a disadvantaged business. So you've taken the first 3 steps. This is the actual step where you would get the certification. This also is very uncomplicated once you have all of those pieces of the puzzle in place. You will need to create an account in eProcurement, ECal Procurement, I'm sorry, Cal eProcurement. On this homepage, what you'll see is click to get certified. So you will click there. It would be better for you to create the account and then click on that so that you're already in the system, because if you click on there, they're going to ask you to sign in. So you might as well just create the account and then go to this homepage and click to get certified. It's going to ask you all the information that you have already acquired in addition to other information. So for example, if you are a corporation, it's going to ask you for your articles of incorporation. Have those already scanned and ready in a file on your computer so that when you go to do this process, you can go right to them and upload them without a problem. It's going to ask you for other information as well that you will need to prove the type of entity that you are. It might ask you for previous tax filings. So have those at the ready if you don't already have them saved on your computer and scanned in, scan them in and file. Now, if you're under a year and you have not filed taxes, there's accommodations for that as well. You can sign an affidavit that says when you started your business. Should you wait? Don't wait. If you're already in business and you've been in business for 6 months, then register yourself as a small certified business, because it's only better for you as a small business to be ready and be certified when and if an opportunity comes to you to bid on a government proposal. You don't want to be scrambling to try and get certified at the last minute. Why is that important? Well, it's important because oftentimes you'll hear about an entity that's put out a bid, but the due date to respond is in short order. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 5 days, sometimes it is a month. But if you don't hear about it as soon as it comes out, or you don't see it and you get wind of it, you need to be ready to submit as soon as possible. Now, what does submit look like? We'll talk about that in the procurement section. Selling to the federal government, there are a lot of business opportunities at Fed Biz Ops, and that's where you're going to look for federal opportunities. Now, Fed Biz Ops is going to be taking the lead on a federal contract, but the information that they're going to draw from is the information that you've supplied in sam.gov. You can also go to the GSA website and create a profile there. The information that they're going to ask you is parallel to what you've supplied to the California entity at ECal Procurement. So your NACE codes, your DUNS number, your sam.gov number. And if you're a small business, they may ask you for your small business certification. So all across the board, from local entities like your city government, all the way to the federal government, the certifications will serve your purpose in one way or another. There are lots of ways to take advantage of trying to sell and procure a contract with a government agency. So many that this webinar would be 5 days long, but these are the basics. And then once you get your foot into the rhythm of understanding how it works and how they will let you know that they're buying and how to submit the information about what you're selling, then it'll make more sense to you. So don't be nervous about it. It is a lot of information, and it is quite daunting, but don't worry, there are many, many resources out there to help you along, including the women's business centers in California. So what are government agencies? We talked about it, generally, but the federal government solicits work from private organizations, and this is their General Service Administration website. So you can go there, create an account, and then you can take a look at all the things that they're purchasing across the whole country. There is also the state level, and when the state government agencies solicit work from private organizations, they send information through the Cal eprocurement.ca.gov. So this is the website where you're actually going to apply for the certifications, and it is also the website where you will go and do research on what the government is buying, when they're buying it. And the beauty of these two entities and agencies and websites is that they are very transparent. They give you all the information that you need in order to understand what they want, when they want it, how they want it, how much they're willing to pay, because oftentimes they'll give you what their budget is. And remember, these are public entities, so they have to disclose all of that information. They have to disclose who is going to get an advantage if they're small business certified, if they're women-owned certified. They give you all of that information. So even though it might be a little daunting and seem like quite a bit of work, which it will be, they are helping you along every step of the way. As we move down the ladder, you can, each state has its own process, and a quick Google search will give you what it looks like for your particular state. But in the state of California, we're looking at the county level. So for example, LA County. The courts are quasi-agencies. Schools are also quasi-government agencies. Utilities, also quasi-government agencies. However, they function just in terms of procurement, just like the county, just like the state, just like the federal government does. They have different procurement processes, but once again, they will tell you what they are. They're not going to be trying to let you figure it out. They will explicitly tell you what it is that you need to do in order to respond to the procurement proposal. And that's the beauty, is that they will lay it all out for you. Now, does it take time to read the procurement proposal? Absolutely. Some of these proposals are up to 200 pages long. Don't let that scare you though, because I'll tell you why. The secret is that a lot of that information is templates. So they're forms, they're examples of contracts. They are not information that you would have to do over and over and over again. So if you are determined to respond to proposals, you can create your own templates to respond, because the information that they are requesting oftentimes is the same over and over and over again. So for example, your W-9 information, your EIN number, the name of your company and what you sell and how you sell it and how you deliver it. All of those things technically stay the same. And so once you put together a resume, once you put together all the different parts that they're requesting, since most of them ask for that same information, you can create your own templates so that you can facilitate answering to a proposal quicker. The first one might be very time consuming and very daunting, but as time goes on, you will get used to it. You can see what information they're requiring of you, and you will have it at the ready because you've already prepared templates that respond to the general information. Now, if you're selling the mop, like we talked about before, and they're requesting 5,000 mops, maybe the price is going to change, right? So the pricing will look different. Maybe the delivery is going to look different. Maybe how they want it delivered is going to look different. However, those separate categories of information are easily changed to accommodate the specific needs of the entity that's requesting it, versus creating the whole proposal all over again. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, give me a question over it. So, federal, state, county, the courts, schools, utilities. There are other quasi agencies such as associations that also function in the same way. Not many other types. And if somebody has heard of one, mention it, please, if I'm not mentioning it. Oftentimes, entities such as Chamber of Commerce's in your area, they do not, even though they might seem like a quasi-government agency, they oftentimes do not follow these same protocols. But I think I've covered them all. I have not come across others other than associations that also function, may function. They're not required to function, but some of those associations, unions, for example, all of those quasi-government organizations often follow the same kind of protocol because it's easier. There is a template for them to follow, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes they don't, because they don't have to, and they have their own procedures. If you're looking to sell to associations, or if you come across a proposal that is from a quasi-government agency that doesn't seem familiar or doesn't look the same as other proposal requests that you've seen, they will still be required to give you the information like we talked about how to respond, when to respond, what the budget is. And in all of these cases, you have the authority as a potential responder to ask questions of the agency. Now, there is a caveat to that sometimes, because oftentimes what will happen is they will tell you in the document when the question and answer time is, whether there's a meeting before the proposal is due for anybody who is interested in responding, and whether or not that in-person meeting is mandatory. So there are a couple of things that you have to keep at the front of your mind when you see something that comes across to you as a request for proposal. You have to be able to identify when it's due, how they want it delivered, because nowadays what is happening is that entities want it electronically submitted. Now, what does that mean? That means that they're using a third party for you, for vendors, to upload your document. That's a good thing and a bad thing, because if you're not aware of it or you didn't pay attention to it, then you might miss the deadline. On the opposite end, if you're assuming that it's going to be electronically delivered to them and they want it mailed with an original copy and 3 copies aside from that, and you have to mail it, then you have to determine how long you need to have the mail get there in time to have it date stamped that it was received before the deadline. Those are all little nuanced things that you need to be aware of, but they will tell you exactly what is expected. So even though there's a lot of information that you're going to need to look for, they will respond and they will give you time to ask questions if you're confused about something that is in the actual report, request for proposal. So that's the beauty of that. So what do government agencies buy? We all think at some point, oh, is what I sell something that the government would buy? Well, yes. Think yes. Always think yes. Why? Because even if they don't buy mops from a vendor directly, you might supply a company that is a cleaning service that needs mops. So you always make sure that you are in the chain of supply, some way, somehow. You make room for yourself, because obviously, we have to really put ourselves out there, right? So I just noticed that we do have questions, and I want to get to those questions before we move on. So, yes, Kathy wants to know if you could get a copy of the presentation, and the answer is yes. Oh, and I see one of my colleagues has been answering, so that's terrific. Thank you. Thank you. I think all the questions were answered. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to move on. Now on to procurement. You're certified, you're ready to sell, you want a contract. Where are you going to get a contract? They don't just fall out of the sky. Well, there's a procedure, and the procedure is called procurement or purchasing. So there are different aspects to procurement and purchasing. One of them is sourcing. So strategic sourcing was a method, a procurement methodology that came into prominence in the 1990s and in the private sector. And then it was adopted later on by the public sector and nonprofit institutions. Pricing is another section of procurement. Now, what is pricing? You would think that pricing is, pricing is pricing. Name your price and we'll, sell it. Well, it involves so much because of the government's desire to equalize who got the contract. So they make it seem more convoluted than it has to be. And in some cases, it is more convoluted than it has to be. But for the basics, for the foundation of procurement, they have to make sure that it's equitable, right? So they categorize it. So there are direct materials, direct labor, payroll overhead, other direct costs, total cost before general and administrative expenses, general and administrative percentage applied to the total cost before, profit, and proposed price. So all of these things are things that you are going to have to include when you're determining the price of what you're going to sell. And this is what they're going to look at as well. Now, some proposals will request all this detail, and some will not. Some will say, if everything is included, give us a flat rate. Now, is it beneficial to you? It might be, but what you want to determine is whether or not that kind of pricing will be beneficial to you or not. Is there a potential for you to lose money if you go with a flat rate and include everything inclusive? So for example, let's say that it's going to require, in order for you to deliver either a service or a product, let's say a service, and the service that you're going to provide, it requires that you take a plane and spend a night in a hotel. Are you going to delineate those costs in the proposal? Are they requesting those costs be delineated and explained? Or can you say, I will take a chance and I will give a flat rate and include the travel and the hotel stay in the cost. Hopefully you're providing a buffer for yourself in order to have some of that profit, right, in the proposed price. You don't want to go overboard and you don't want to go sell yourself short. You determine whether or not your pricing, in accordance with how they're requesting it, makes sense for your business. In addition to that, what you want to do is you want to determine what certifications they're requesting and how much of an advantage you will get for having those certifications, and whether or not you lowering your price is beneficial to actually winning the contract. So you're kind of playing a numbers game, right? You're kind of rolling the dice with your pricing based on how much of an advantage you're going to get in actually getting the contract. And only you can determine that. They won't tell you that you have to come in at a certain price. Now, what are they doing on the other end? They're looking at everybody's response. They're giving the set-asides to everybody who qualifies. So if there are 3 women-owned business and they're required, that was one of the requirements, they're looking at all of those and they're giving the 3% or 5%, whatever it is, advantage to each one. Get the picture? There's 3 of them, right? Everything else is equal so far. Same product that's being delivered. They're all 3 women businesses, so they all get the 3% or 5%, whatever is being allocated. They're all on the same playing field. But let's say one is priced to include everything that will be delivered. And the other 2 are priced item by item. And because they're priced item by item, their price is higher than the one that's a flat fee. It might be that that one that is priced at a flat fee is still going to make the money that they need to make, that they've determined that they want to profit. And they will win the bid because their price is lower. And in many cases, the agency is required to take the 3 that are at the lowest. Now maybe there's a 4th one over here that's also flat rate, but it doesn't have a certification. So already they're behind. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot of information and it can get confusing. So if you have a question, please ask it. So that's pricing, how you price, what you should include so that you do not sell yourself short. So for there to be fairness, which is what the certifications were initially all about, it's the decision making the actions that should be unbiased, which is why they're not determined as to whether or not the company has 3 employees or 10 employees necessarily, because both organizations that have 3 employees and 10 employees, or even 100 employees, would be considered a small business and could be certified as a small business. So don't sell yourself short and think, oh, I'm not qualified because I only have 10 employees. You never disqualify yourself. Never. On any level, unless they're asking for mops and you still sell staples. I would say disqualify yourself in that case. But not if you sell anything like a mop or have access to somebody who does sell a mop and you want to collaborate with them. Another fairness qualification, all bids should be considered on the basis of their compliance with the terms of the solicitation documents, and a bid should not be rejected for any reasons other than those specifically stipulated in the solicitation document. So, for example, a request for proposal says that you must, okay? And there are buzzwords within proposal that you need to pay attention to. So must, may are 2 very important words. You may be certified, not required. You must be certified, absolutely required. So when you read the documents, you need to make sure that you're reading them in the context in which they are written. Let's say that and this is not a hyperbole. It is actually the case that in some requests for proposals, it states that the paper that you respond on, if it's to be mailed, needs to be of a certain percentage that's, the paper is a certain percentage recyclable, that your font needs to be not more than 12 point, that you can only submit information about your company in 3 pages or less. If you send them a document that is on paper that's not recyclable, your information about your company is 6 pages long, not less than 3, and your font is 14 point in any font, this is where number 2 will come in and say, guess what? You did not comply. And they won't even look at it. They won't even read it. It might be the best priced, it might be the best proposal that they received, but they will consider it not to have complied with what they've requested. And I have seen that happen. So make sure that when you're reading those proposals, you're reading exactly what they want and believe them. And also be able to differentiate between may and must, because that's really important. Number 3, a contract should be signed with the bidder whose bid is compliant and responds best to the objectives of the requirement in terms of technical capability, and price. So what does that mean? That means that their stipulation, and all of this information is accessible. You can ask this questions in the question and answer time period. What is their stipulation? Is it the top 3 that would be considered? Is it the lowest price and end of story, including all set-asides for certifications? They will have to tell you that if it's not directly specific in the request for proposal. All of that information should be readily available to you. And 4th, bidders should have the right to challenge the bidding process whenever they feel they were unfairly treated. So for example, let's say you know that company B down the street is submitting a response, and you know for a fact that they sent the response that had to be mailed in paper that was not recyclable, and it was required. And how do you know this? Well, you went over there and you saw them printing it, and you said, are you sending it on that paper? And they said yes, and it was sent. Well, guess what? You have the ability to challenge, especially if they won the bid. Isn't that incredible? Something so silly. The type of paper that the proposal response was printed on. But that's how serious they are about these things. And that's how serious they are about providing the opportunity for bidders to get the information that they want. If you know that organization B down the street did exactly that, and yet they still won the contract, then you want to know why they were not disqualified for non-compliance. And it's your legal right to do so. So never be afraid to ask why you didn't win the bid. Not only why didn't you win it, but who did win it, which should be public knowledge, and how did they win it? In some instances, you can get a copy of the response that they gave. oftentimes that also is public information, and how much they're getting paid. Because in the end, it has to be approved by either a board of governors, a council, city council, board of supervisors at the county level. So there are ways to get answers to those questions if you'd like them. Implementation. So the new wave of implementation, the process for is e-procurement, as I was talking about. The 4 traditional procurement principles, they're re-examined and to see whether there are deterrents to e-commerce. There has to be a low bid wins, and that's a must. There's separation between the vendor and user, which is desirable to avoid favoritism. So you can't have your cousin Vinny supplying your cars or your trucks to all your public works. That would not be good. Fixed price and fixed term contracts are best for government, and open access is absolutely imperative in all situations, which is what we were talking about, that everybody has the opportunity to respond to a proposal. And the jury is still out as to whether the new commerce is contingent upon a reformulation of those particular principles or not. Oftentimes, it's more difficult for people to send in proposals because they are only e-commerce. So for example, if you had an Amazon store and you sent all your supplies to Amazon to ship, and you weren't thinking of shipping costs to a government agency, now you'd have to incorporate that shipping cost because Amazon is not going to send it to you for you, mainly because the government is not going to let Amazon send it to them, not because Amazon wouldn't do it, because Amazon would take any business anywhere, anytime. It's the other way around. It wouldn't be accepted that way. You would have to provide it. You would have to ship it. There are other kinds of rules and regulations that you would have to follow. So in the pricing, you would have to incorporate shipping. You would have to incorporate delivery. You would have to figure out delivery times. So those are things that need to be addressed eventually on the government side as to whether or not they will accept e-commerce, strictly e-commerce proposals. So customer relations is really important, which is why a lot of this implementation is in place, because they want small businesses, public sector to provide goods and services to the government, because they not only can they not make it themselves, they can't acquire it themselves, they can't go to the store, they can't get it shipped. It would be a nightmare for them. So there is a regulation, Federal Acquisitions Regulation, Part 42, which identifies requirements for documenting contractor performance evaluations for systems, non-systems, architect, engineer, construction acquisitions, everything from A to Z. These are for bigger contracts like bridge building, freeway building, all of those things. Just imagine all the vendors that are involved in building a freeway or building a road or building a building. And so that's part of what the Federal Acquisition Regulation encompasses. It also speaks to past performance and customer satisfaction. So if you have a contract with a government entity, and the contract is for 2 years with a renewable 3 years after that, each year individually, chances are that if you have great past performance and excellent customer service, you will get that contract for the 3rd year, the 4th year, and the 5th year. And if that holds true for all 5 years, when they go out to bid again, it might be that they just have to go out to bid because of the end of the contract, but that doesn't mean that you won't re-win that bid because they're happy with you, because you've been innovative, because you've been customer centric. And so your ability to keep that contract is really good. Now, do other people think that that's fair? Maybe not. But if you're doing a good job and you can prove it and you can sustain that great job and excellent customer service, why shouldn't you be rewarded? Any questions so far? No? We're sure? Okay. So the actual process. So government procurement is also known, as we mentioned, purchasing. And procurement it's the procurement of goods and services by government agencies. It's very simple, right? In theory, it should be very simple. It's actually very convoluted, but there is a way to maneuver through all the red tape and actually get a government contract. And it's a really great thing when you do, not just for the money, but for the satisfaction that you can that you've been able to maneuver around the process, that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. It's an accomplishment, and anybody that does it should be proud of themselves. This is why I say it's convoluted. So the process flow chart. Now, is this for every single proposal? No, this is just an example of really how convoluted it is. And there are some, aspects of this that you can say, oh, wow, okay, I get it. They're going through this, they're going through that. That's why sometimes some contracts take anywhere between 30 days and 6 months to actually get signed. So why would you want to try and sell something to the government when it might take so long, right? Well, once you start to work for a government agency, or once you've gotten a contract, it's really satisfying that you have the ability to take what you're doing and sell it to an entity that's really using it to help, and to not just help their employees, help their community in some cases. Your ability to help on a larger scale with what you do and what you sell is really is satisfying to know that what you do is touching a lot of people. And aside from the money that might be good, that drips in, because government payments, they're not the first ones on the totem pole to say, we're not, the ones that say, oh, wow, they pay the greatest and the fastest and all of that. But they do pay regularly, and that's a good thing, especially if you're a small business. So methods of solicitation. They're informal and they're formal. An informal example is somebody using a purchasing card in a department to go buy paper. Doesn't require any formal request for bid. The other ones are formal, and those are competitive bidding. They require that the NACE codes are used and identified. They're considered RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, and RFQs, different word Q. Alrighty. A request for proposal. Its purpose and advantages. So it's when they are ready to shop around and evaluate many factors before making a choice. And it provides a clear comparison of vendors offers and capabilities. A request for qualifications, which is the first Q, usually refer to pre-qualification stage at the procurement process. So it's just seeing how many people are out there that qualify for what they want to buy. They're just getting a bird's eye view of how many people are out there that actually produce this one product or service that they're interested in purchasing down the road. The purpose, not solely based on the price at which the vendor or contractor provides in order to perform the service or provide the product. And the advantage are based off various aspects of the type of job to be performed or product to be supplied. So let's say the contract for qualifications, they want a pool of people that they can pull from. And then let's say that they've established the pool. There's 5 people in the pool, 5 companies, 5 organizations, and they have told those 5 organizations, we have selected the 5 of you. And when we need this product, we will tell all 5 of you to give us a task order in order to determine who in that moment can give us the product at what price, at what time frame, in what order, right? What is it going to take for you to deliver? And they might conduct interviews of the top 3 that they have come back and responded. Maybe 2 of them said, we don't do that anymore, and now we're out of the running. Maybe the other one says, we're too busy and we don't want to submit a task order. So the 3 remaining submit a task order response, and they determine of the 3 who is going to perform best at the best price. That's a request for qualification. The next one is a request for information, and this requires less information. They don't want a whole proposal response. It's just a query. So the purpose, government is looking for information, or they're not sure what the solution might be to their problem, and they just want information. So they're just doing research. The advantage, they're fast and they help inform next steps to meet business needs. So it might give you an idea that they're looking, and you might do some side negotiation in terms of keeping in touch with the buyer, finding out when they might actually go out to bid. So that is an advantage for you to know that they're requesting information. A request for quote is the second Q, and that's a solicitation for goods or services in which the company asks suppliers to submit a price quote and a bid on the chance to fulfill certain tasks by submitting a request for proposal. So these 2 documents are similar, and the request for proposal and the request for quote. The purpose, when they know exactly what is wanted and why. But there's a need to explore the financial details, because maybe they have a budget. You have a right to ask what that budget is. And the advantage is that it removes distractions, and it allows the buyers to focus on the price and not the minutia of whether you filled out the DAR form, whether you filled out the W-9 correctly, whether you have an EIN number. It's focused on the price. They just need something. They need it to stay in budget. They have funds that they need to spend before the end of the fiscal year. All kinds of reasons why they would just go out for a request for quote. All righty. Any questions on those? So at the beginning, I talked about the California Women's Centers in California. There are 13 of them. And on this map, you can see where they are located. You can go to their website, and you can follow them on Facebook at California WBC Network. They provide a multitude of resources, of information, of webinars such as this on different topics for small businesses. And they also service men. They are a women's business center, like I said, to try and get women's businesses on the same playing level, but they certainly provide services to all people. So I want to mention our next webinar is opening an eBay store, something less convoluted, something a little more fun, and we will walk you through the steps to open your own eBay store. And that's where you can register. It's on Wednesday, March 4th at 12 p.m. As always, I thank you very much for coming. I thank you very much for being here, for asking questions, and thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And I know that our colleagues at Canterbury Business Center also appreciate it. You can follow us at Canterbury BC on Facebook, and you can visit us at www.canterburybusinesscenter.com. Thank you so much, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions, like I said, reach out to us. You can reach out to Canterbury Business Center at gmail.com. And if you want the presentation, you can request that as well. And look for the webinar for a replay on YouTube at Canterbury Business Center. Thank you and have a good afternoon.